This is Talk is Sheep, a podcast by the Wild Sheep Society of British Columbia. Come along as we take conversations that matter to you into the high alpine.
Mr. Hamilton, episode 42. Here we are. Who'd have thunk?
No kidding. That's your age too, isn't it?
Yeah. Creative accounting wise, for sure. So at heart, for sure. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we just went through episode 41 and had a great talk with Mike Kirk and myself regarding our hunt in northwestern BC. It was kind of, like you said, funny interviewing myself, but we had a great trip on our fly-in trip, and as you all heard, we came out of there without a sheep, but just the experience. We did see a lot of sheep, some mature sheep, tons of goats, and just the experience. It's so cathartic to get in the mountains and just that re-energize, reset. And I can tell you, when I come out of there, I'm just fired up about conservation and the work we're doing and putting sheep on the mountains. And we got such a great wild sheep community. There's so many fantastic people. I got out and getting messages from my buddies that killed some sheep and people that seen sheep, and it's just so such an exciting time of year. It just feels so good to be out there, whether you're pulling the trigger or not. And I didn't pull the trigger, as you guys heard on that last podcast. So
yeah, it sucks you couldn't close the gap, but hey, it's not like you didn't see anything. You're not coming out of there with memories, right? And that's, as we talked about, what's the measure of a successful hunt, and that's all in the eyes of the ones on it, right? And if you say it's a success, that's all that matters, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I know some of my buddies would be like, "That's not a successful hunt," and fair enough. To some people, it is important to them to kill a sheep, to kill a ram every year, and that's fine. Not judging, but for me, it was more than a success. And the only thing that's missing is the meat. Boy, if there was some substitute for the meat, I'd be all over it. But that's the one thing every year I look at my freezer and go, "Oh man, I wish I was a better sheep hunter." So
you just got to get into bears and coyotes and all that stuff, right? They're everywhere.
Yeah, it's not the same. I have to say that sheep meat is just so decadent for sure. But I always said I'm a better conservationist than a hunter, for sure, right?
Yeah, speaking of coyotes, though, there was yet again more attacks in Stanley Park. It's over 34 attacks in the last couple of weeks. Like, I don't get it. It's just that I don't get it. That's a whole other conversation we can get into, and maybe we can bring in somebody that's a little bit more versed on urban wildlife management and get into it from there. But yeah, so that segue was there from coyotes and totally went off on a tangent. So
yeah, no, I know it's near dear to your heart. I've gotten a few texts to you over the last couple of weeks here about that. It's like another one. And it's like, oh my goodness, yeah. And that's the thing, right? It's people think wildlife are these pretty little animals on the Disney Channel, right? And it actually is. Obviously, I don't want to see anyone get hurt or anyone injured, but these, this interface where we have these wildlife confrontations, it's a good reminder to people that we've taken over, we're encroaching on their territory, and it's a realization too that they maybe aren't these cute cuddly little animals that Disney portrays them, or some of our anti-friends on the other side of the aisle portray them, right? They're real animals. We're encroaching on their territory, and people need to recognize that. So I think in some ways it's a good reminder to people. Obviously, again, I don't want to see anyone get hurt, but there was I think it was a 2-year-old bit a couple of weeks ago, and that's
that's terrible. Like
Absolutely.
that kid's going to be likely scared and scarred for life now. I'd be curious though, these people that have been bit, do they feel any different about wildlife management now? Are they, what side of the fence did they sit on before, and what side do they sit on now? So, and again, the other day too, there was somebody found in a blueberry farm that was dead, and they said there was a black bear that had quote disturbed the body, end quote. What does that mean? Like, does this black bear, was there a predation kill? Was it a spook kill, or did this bear come across an already dead body? And so again, it's showing that as you said, there's no Disney side of wildlife as much as we'd love to believe it. We know it's not the truth. So.
It's interesting. I in some ways, I love what Disney and sort of the narrative around that has done, because they elevated the importance of wildlife in people's lives, right, in their homes and their communities. But what it's also done is created this unrealistic expectation of what these animals are, and there's no real appreciation for the circle of life through that, right, either. So that's there's that disconnect that while their appreciation's there, the circle of life is totally lost in that whole thing. And then we get these people that, you can never harm an animal, and there's no real understanding of what really happens in the forest. Right. So, yeah, for
sure. So we totally went on a tangent there, but
yeah. So,
gear talk,
we do. Well, before we get there, let's just, before we take into that, let's touch base. We have one raffle that's open currently.
Right.
So get your tickets. We're going to sell this one out. We're actually going to have a pub night in Victoria, October 16th. It's scheduled. It's yet to be confirmed, and that's because of COVID. But we are drawing some other raffle stuff October 16th, including this raffle that we're going to discuss shortly. So you want to get those tickets. This thing is well over half sold out. This is a great little unit. It's called the Gen 2 Doghouse with Badlands Series ACU Digital Camo Roughneck Edition tent. So basically, it's a trailer that you turn into a tent. It's got running water. It's got a stove. It's meant for the off-road, but you convert it into this really cool tent unit. So super, really, like, it's just an amazing little unit. It was a donation from the good people over at Kit Distributors and Doghouse Tents. So it's just a really cool little unit. Tickets are on sale at our website, wildsheepsociety.com/raffle. There's only 400 tickets available, so your odds are really good. And we're going to draw that in Victoria, October 16th. So you got a month and a half to get your tickets, but don't wait, because like all our raffles, they do tend to sell out. I expect that with this one as well. So great little unit. Check it out online.
Yeah, we've had multiple raffles sell out, as Kyle's just said. And a lot of the people come to us and go, damn it, 2 weeks out, it sells out. And they go, damn it, I shouldn't have waited. So here's your fair warning that it will sell out, and it will be before you expect it to.
Right on, Steve. All right, so episode 42. So this is actually that we recorded this in conjunction with episode 41. So we talked about Mike and I in the mountain chasing sheep, talked about our hunt, but then we segued into a gear talk after that. So, it was a personal experience. We talk lots about gear. We talk about some of the new gear we bought, some of the old gear we were using, some of the things that failed on us. We didn't throw anyone under the bus. So there was some pieces of equipment that did break down throughout the hunt. Some of the stuff that maybe failed us a little bit, and then some of the stuff that really performed well. We got some new gear, stuff that we're looking for 22 that we'd like to have on the mountain that we're looking for. So just want to make a comment that we talk lots about different brands, right? And I have no specific brand that I exclusively run. I run what works best for me. And I think it's important to note that there's a lot of great gear manufacturers in the hunting space out there right now, and actually some that are outside the hunting space. Maybe some people are going to get after me, but look at Arc'teryx. It's a Canadian company, and they run great gear, expensive as hell, but top-notch rain gear, right? So, but you're not going to get any camo rain gear. And there's other providers in the hunting space that provide great rain gear as well. I run the Stormfront from Sitka Gear and swear by it. Mike's switching to that this year. He's got the top, and he's going to get the pants this year. So just a great piece of kit from Sitka, who happens to be our conservation partner as well. So just a shout out to Sitka Gear for all their support in British Columbia. I was just doing the math, and they're roughly $100,000 in donations to the Wild Sheep Society BC over the last 3 years in BC. So if you're looking for someone to support in the hunting world, first and foremost, you're going to look for a piece of kit that's going to work for you, right? You're not going to just blindly support somebody that is going to donate based on donations. I get that. That has to be quality gear. My experience with Sitka is they're there. They're quality stuff. I don't run everything exclusively Sitka. I've got some other pieces, but the pieces I do have, I love and I swear by it. And I just really like what they do for gear, first and foremost. And boy, in terms of conservation in BC, it's pretty hard to beat them.
Oh, absolutely. I'm new to the mountain hunting world, as you know, and I went on people's recommendations, and the name that consistently came up was Sitka, and that's what I'm running this year, and I'm sure it'll perform really well for me, and I'm getting stoked for it.
So I'm interested. You're going on your hunt here in September, a caribou/sheep combo. I'll be curious for your feedback on the dew point. So I'm running the Stormfront system. The dew point's a bit lighter, but it's not as robust being lighter. So, if you get into the heavy rains, now we didn't have much for rain on this trip, and the Stormfront was overkill. Dew point would have been perfect, but obviously you can't have 3 or 4 different. Well, I can't on my budget have 3 or 4 different sets of rain gear. So, I've kind of mine's a late season set. I can wear them in November and I can wear them in August, right? But it's a bit more. They're a bit heavier. I compare my rain pants to Mike, and mine are double the weight, right? But they're also super durable in terms of the protection, right? So
yeah, be curious. I hope I don't have to use it, but you never know in mid-September, right?
Well, buddy, you're going to use it. So it's interesting. Like I know you're this is one of your first mountain trips, and you're an experienced hunter by all standards. But in terms of the mountains, some of this is new to you. Interesting with your rain pants. Lots of times you'll wear your rain pants in the morning when you're hiking, right? Because there's the dew on the trees, or you don't even have to have rain. But usually you get up in the morning. If you're doing an early morning hunt and you have to hike anywhere, you're probably going to throw your rain pants on, maybe even your jacket, because everything's got dew on it. And otherwise then all of a sudden your pants are wet and
Makes
you're
a miserable day.
Yeah, exactly. So you'll dry out. It's not like you're soaked to the bone, but you're going to be wet. So quite often that first morning hike, we'll throw the rain gear on. At least the lead guy, the guy that's leading through the bush, he'll wear the rain pants. The guy behind him, he's kind of knocked a lot of it off, and that's where you flip a coin in the morning when you're hiking through that stuff, because somebody's got a bust brush and he's going to get wet, and the other guy's going to stay fairly dry, right? So
works for me.
Yeah, right on. So. So like I said, on this podcast, we talk lots about gear, and we talk about different brands. We're not really brand centric per se. We just talk about the brands that are working for us. And just a reminder that there are lots of great gear providers out there. These are the ones that work for me personally. I haven't tried them all. And I'm not an experienced guy. That's where when I talk to the Clay Lancasters of the world, or the Shane Pallisters, or, those guys, those are the guys that see the stuff. But again, a lot of the times they find something that works for them, and they don't necessarily use the other gear either. So, boots are one classic example. Another one are packs. That there's some that fit for you and some maybe that aren't a good fit for you. And it's just trying to find those ones that are a good fit and what work, right? So. Yeah,
absolutely. And we mentioned it 2 podcasts ago, or on the last podcast, wasn't it? Where that Barney's just won't sit right on me, and the Stone Glacier like a glove.
Yeah, I really think that Barney's is just an adjustment issue. We'll get that sorted out for you for sure. We'll definitely reach out to Kevin. He'll give us some tips there. And I don't have a solution because I'm not a backpack guy, but Kevin knows his gear well, and I'm sure that. And in terms of for you hauling caribou quarters off the mountain, that's going to be that external frame is going to be your buddy if you can get it sorted and it fits you right. And so. Yeah.
Let's see if we can get Kevin on a Zoom, even 15 minutes, just the 3 of us.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Why don't we'll
chat about that off the air.
Yeah, I like that for sure. Okay, so episode 42, Gear Talk, again with myself and Mike Kirk coming off the Northern BC.
Across Canada and throughout the world, if you come across a campfire in the woods, on a mountaintop, or next to a river, You'll find warm company and friendly people gathered around. Regardless of your lifestyle or place you call home, we invite you to learn more about what it means to be a hunter in the modern era. If you love the outdoors, care about where your food comes from, and are concerned for the future of wildlife and the environments that they need to survive, pull up a seat. We have a story to tell. Welcome to our campfire.
All right, well, let's segue now, and let's talk about some gear. So, Mike and I was 13 days with a guy in the backcountry, and then the 2 days up, 2 days back in a truck. You have a lot of time to discuss things and strategies and gear and all these different things. And I always enjoy listening to the guys that do this for a living. The Nolan Osborns or the Clay Lancasters, the Shane Pellisters, and I always learn something from these guys. So we're going to pass along some things that we learned on this trip and talk about some of our gear and just kind of go through that sort of stuff and touch base on those things. So, so I guess, Mike, let's start off with our sleeping facility. So, you and I, we have quite an array of tents, right? We have 3 or 4 different ones. So you had your original Eureka, which you've since retired. We purchased an Nello GT4, which we thought was a 3-man, but it's actually a 4-man. So we have this very cool Hilleberg that we bought for a caribou hunt a few years ago. Then we got a lightweight REI, which is truly a 3-man, which would have been probably perfect for the hunt, really. And then we've got this tarp tent that we've used in the past. So on this one, we took our Nello GT4, which I think was a great call. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely, Kyle. I'd say our 2 go-to pieces of our tents are basically the Hilleberg and the Bear Paw tarp tent. And we've learned the limitations of the Bear Paw. So the Bear Paw is great in the fact that it's Cuban fiber. For those who don't know, it's kind of like a tarp plastic hybrid. It's almost unrippable. And you set up one pole in the middle, then you stake it out. And it gives you a pretty good footprint. I guess you probably sleep about 3 people in it. It's kind of it's got a square footprint on the bottom, and then it goes up to a peak at the top, like one peak with a tent pole. You probably put in about 12 stakes, and then there's bug netting on the bottom. So all up, it probably weighs just over a pound. So that's the beauty of that particular item. One of the downsides of that item is the fact that it is only a single layer and it doesn't breathe. So, if it's really hot, humid conditions, you're getting a lot of moisture and you're waking up sometimes a couple times at nighttime with a little cloth, you're wiping it down. That's one of the limitations. The other limitations Kyle and I learned last year, unfortunately, was, unfortunately, Kyle and I sometimes have to learn the same mistake 2 or 3 times before we lock it in. And that is when you're tired and getting a little bit lazy, don't set up on a mountain pass. Just because there's 0 wind and 1,000,000 miles visibility, you think this is an idyllic place, doesn't mean that's going to be the same way in 3, 4, or 5 hours. And the mountains, as we all know, that the weather could change 4 or 5 times in any given day. So we had set up probably about 5 p.m. after hiking about 8 hours. So we're really tired. We'd come probably about another 12, 13 kilometers, climbed over a mountain pass, dropped back down into a valley, and we said, basically, this is as far as we can go. But why don't we, instead of dropping down 500 feet, why don't we stand this mountain pass so we get a few more glassing opportunities? So we set up camp, set up the tarp tent, and we should have known because there was not a stick of vegetation. Everything was totally windblown on this mountain pass. And so at about 2 p.m. in the morning, we're tucked into bed, feeling warm and content and safe and secure. And suddenly it wasn't. It was probably blown again. This time, Kyle, would I be exaggerating and say 80 kilometers an hour?
I don't think so.
It was 80 kilometers an hour plus. And we're sitting there, and one of the limitations of the tarp tent is it only comes down to about 6 inches off the ground, then the bug netting starts. And the air was getting underneath. So I think structurally it would have been sound if we could have staked it right to the ground, but its design doesn't allow that for ventilation. So it was actually lifting from the inside out. So Kyle and I we're literally holding it down so it doesn't blow away on us. And was it raining as well, Kyle? I think it was.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a torrential downpour. So the risk was not only would we lose our tarp tent, but everything within it would get blown away as well instantly and get wet. So Kyle, he volunteers, he jumps out, and he's in his long johns, I believe, and it's blowing 80 kilometers an hour, heavy rain, and he's restaking everything because our stakes are letting go. It's like pop one goes, pop the other goes. So Kyle's out there for like half an hour restaking the whole time. I'm holding the tarp tent down from the inside, and so eventually we said, we got to get out of here. This is going to work, and the wind's not abating. If anything, it's increasing in strength. So we take turns holding the tarp tent down from the inside, while the other person just packs up their bags. So we took our backpacks with him, and every piece of item or every item we owned, we're just stuffing in as fast as we can, not rolling, not folding, nothing, and just get it all together. And then the last piece of equipment that came down was the tarp tent, and we just sort of basically ran off the mountain. And as soon as we got 500 feet below, it was, I wouldn't say flat calm, but maybe it was 20 kilometers an hour. But yeah, unfortunately, we left a few items up there in the confusion and darkness and the wind, and they blew away. So, but fortunately, I came back in a few days and I found my couple items. But what did you lose, Kyle? Something took off on you?
Yeah, my merino gloves, they were both missing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So those are the limitations for that particular structure. So it's great, it weighs a pound, but I don't think I would ever plan a sheep trip knowing I'm going to spend it on top of the mountains with that particular item. That's where we have the Hilleberg. And the Hilleberg, I mean, it's bomb-proof in those particular conditions. It has a lot to offer. The only downside to that particular Nala GT was the fact the footprint. It's got such a big vestibule on it and stuff. We're having a hard time finding places large enough to set it up. And that in the weight, it is 8 pounds, and that's a little luxurious for a 2-week backpacking trip. But it didn't seem to burden us too much, Kyle? I think we were roughly 65, 67 pounds going in for 2 weeks. So,
yeah. What do we weigh? I think I was 64 and you were 61. Is that what we were? And that includes a rifle and all our food, everything, no water, but everything else, right?
Yeah.
So.
64 or 61.
Yeah. So that's exceptional, So, but I think we can do better with regards to the tent, right? Well, I think Kyle and I we're both thinking about buying another or a smaller version of the Hilleberg, maybe a 3-person or 2-person or something. See what's out there.
Yeah,
is that big enough to hold your gear for 2 guys plus 2 gear? I have no idea.
Well, I mean, Steve, like you can go with a smaller tent without a vestibule. Of course, that's going to save you weight, but then again, you're going to have to come up with some kind of strategy to protect your backpack. So,
right.
So Kyle, with his other tent, was it the REI one, Kyle? Or MEC one, we actually brought, we have pack covers, but a lot of times in the mountain weather, that's not adequate enough to keep all the elements out. So we actually bring like a black garbage bag, like a contractor bag, and we'll tie it up and we'll put it inside that. And even then, sometimes if the wind really bad, you could come out and your pack, well, our experience could be, I wouldn't say blown away, but maybe blown away, Kyle. So we weigh it down with rocks on top of the mountain. So, the vestibules are great. I don't say the necessity. It's a bit of a luxury, but more than one time we cooked in the vestibule on this trip because it was just raining so hard and the elements were making it uncomfortable.
So yeah, the 4 is super luxurious, Steve, for 2 guys. It's overkill. A 3 would be more appropriate. And so there's the weight savings, right? Like that's part of it. But then even more so the footprint when you're up on the mountain and you're pressed for places to, even at the lake, we had a hard time finding a place that was flat, right? And Mike didn't have a great sleep the last night because we were kind of he wasn't in a great spot where he was set up. He was kind of on a knoll, but there's just no flat spot. Whereas if you had a smaller, like a 3-man, it's going to increase your chances of having. And I think they typically recommend one size above, right? Like if you got 2 men, you have 2 people, you have a 3-man. If you have 3 people, a 4-man, and so forth, right? So that 3, it would be a nice to have a 3-man for the 2 of us on that hunt. But definitely the Hilleberg was the right call on this one, Mike, because there were just so many different opportunities for us to get messed over. Like I know the 2 times we stayed on top, we would have probably been forced off with that tarp tent. I don't think we could have stayed. Certainly that the second place we moved to on top of the plateau, there's no way we could have stayed there with that tarp tent. It just wouldn't have. It was not going to work out. Yeah,
the only benefit to the tarp tent is the weight savings. Yeah. So, however, having said that, the Hilleberg with the footprint, I think one thing we did notice was setting up it properly is a little more critical. Where a lot of tents are very forgiving, you can put them up and you just set your poles and your pegs and they're taut. Where the Hilleberg, unless you set it up perfectly and you have a really flat spot, there's always going to be some loose parts within that structure, within the tent structure itself, and which results in a lot of flapping and then a lot of touching between the inner and the tent and the outer tarp. And we got a little bit of moisture ingress because of that, but not a lot. But it definitely kept us awake at night because it sounded like sails flapping in the wind. And we did everything we could to make it as tight as possible. But when you have undulating terrain, we just couldn't stretch it out as much as we wanted to. So bring your plugs.
Yeah. Which, that brings up another question. Let's talk about that. We'll jump into that. It's a good segue is earplugs. Earplugs or not, right? So obviously we use the softies for shooting. They're a great opportunity. It's pretty hard to carry, the full ear cover for shooting. So, we use the softies for that, obviously. But then, I'd be curious to know any of our listeners what your thoughts are. Are you guys earplugs people or not? Obviously, your quality of sleep is better, and there's a number of factors in the woods, right? Like if you're by a lake or you're by a fast moving stream, like we were the majority of the time, we always tried to find a water source, except for up top. Clearly, you couldn't do that, but where you could, so you had a lot of extra noise there. So trying to get a good night's sleep, but there's a huge downside. One of which is if there's a porcupine or even a grizzly in camp, you're not going to hear it, right? Or reduces your chances of hearing it. So curious to know people's thoughts on that. Do you wear earplugs? Do you not? And then the other side of it is you can't hear your alarm clock. So, Mike and I struggled with that. And we've done this before. We'd set alarms and we both have wristwatches, which we'd use. And then for whatever, if you got earplugs, you end up not hearing your alarm, and then you wake up and you miss, prime glassing opportunity, which is critical. You're only in there for 10 days or 2 weeks, and now you're missing out on that. So that's one of the pieces of gear that we discussed picking up was like a more like a louder, like we're so used to iPhones now or your smartphone where it just is blasting you, right? You're not going to miss it. So the little alarm on a wristwatch is just not adequate, right? So that's one of the things I think on your list of things to get, right, Mike, is a good alarm.
Yeah, I think it's good to note that we're blaming the lack of hearing the alarm on the softy earplugs as opposed to our audio range diminishing as we age. But yes, no, I think it's important to a little bit of a backstory for Kyle and I. We're both airline pilots, and as a result, sleeping in an airplane for the last 25, 30 years, we generally wear earplugs because there's a lot of noise, a lot of wind noise and such. So that's translated into our everyday life. So to me, that's just normal sleeping with earplugs. In fact, it feels unnatural to sleep without them. So, but it always comes down to the question, when you're sleeping in the bush, I think for me, getting a good night's sleep is very important, allowing your body to recover and give you more opportunities for the next day as well. A few more miles you can climb. But Kyle generally doesn't snore, so I don't wear earplugs because of that. But yeah, it's a tough question because I've never had a grizzly come into camp within the last 20 years anyway. We know they're there, but would you rather have a good night's sleep or would you rather be aware that there's a grizzly in camp messing around with stuff? So we've actually slept without them a few times, and it did save some of our gear, right, Kyle? We can hear stuff messing around with our food in the trees or something else, the porcupine's climbing. So I think it's a tough decision. I don't know if there's any right or wrong decision in that regard.
Right on. Okay, so new gear pieces. So for me, I'll jump on this one first. The big piece for me this year was the backstory is I've run a few different packs over the years. I had an Eberly stock for my first sheep trip, and that was just painful. It was not that it was a bad pack; it was the wrong pack for what I was using it for. And you put 100 pounds in an Eberly stock and strap some sheep horns to it. It was not a comfortable situation. So Mike quickly convinced me, you need to do something different. So I think that was when I bought my first Barney's pack and external frame, Barney's Yukon out of Barney's Sports Chalet in Anchorage. And that was great. A great pack. External frame. I used it on my caribou hunt. I would say that by far has been the best usage for that pack, although I used it on a sheep hunt. It was great for that too, but a little bit heavier than sort of an internal frame pack. but just super comfortable, especially at heavy weights. So you can throw 140 pounds on it, and you're never going to find a more comfortable experience than with the Barneys, in my opinion. So a couple of years ago, I upgraded to a Stone Glacier for sheep hunting, and it was good. I like it, and Mike did the same. He purchased one as well. But for me, it just didn't quite fit as much as good as I liked it. So this year, I thought I'm going to try out the new Kifaru. So I got a Kifaru Muskeg. So that was my new gear piece this year, and I have to say that was a great fit for me. A really, really great pack that I really felt good in. It was really comfortable, handled the weight well. And one of the pieces I tried this year, and Steve, on the way up, we went through Prince George, and you see me messing with the gun bearer. So it comes with a gun bearer, or I purchased one to go with it. And boy, that gun bearer is a slick piece of kit. I loved it. It was super, super. Once I got it figured out and how you use it, there's a few limitations and a few things you got to figure out. Specifically, when you're taking your pack on and off, I take my rifle off before I take my pack off, and I put my pack on and then put my rifle in the bearer. I was trying to do it together, and I hit myself in the head about 6 times before I figured I had to do things differently. And maybe there's a way, and if somebody knows a way, let me know. It's one extra step. But the cool thing is when you pick up your pack, and your pack's 70 pounds, and then you got an 8-pound rifle, if you put your 70-pound pack on and then put your 8-pound rifle on, it's a hell of a lot easier. It makes you feel a lot better than putting a 78-pound pack on, right? So that was actually one of the benefits. And once I sort of got that system down, I really liked it. The pack itself was, I've never had a Kifaru product before. Our VP, Mike Selden, to the society, he runs them and he swears by them. And he said, dude, you got to check it out. And it's been a great fit. Really, really happy with the product. And I'm definitely going to use that again for sheep hunting. I really like it. Mike, over to you. What piece of equipment was new for you this year?
Well, to touch back on the backstory again, being an airline pilot and flying international routes, I haven't flown in a year and a half. Therefore, my income has been decreased dramatically. So my eternal quest for new gear, has been truncated. So I don't think I've had much new gear. I've had gear envy with Kyle, because Kyle's been gainfully employed and flying across the world for the last year. In fact, I think he is anticipating being laid off, spending lots of money prior to that happening. No real new gear for me. Just I stuck with my old Stone Glacier, my old rifle and stuff. I don't really think I purchased any new equipment this year. Did I, Kyle? Can you?
Yeah, no, you're right. And on that note, the Stone Glacier, we were talking about that, and that's a really good fit for you. You've been really happy with that pack, haven't you?
Yeah. So, one of the issues I have, I say one of the issues I had with the pack is it didn't quite fit, and that was more or less user error. I didn't know how to fit a pack properly. It was always sagging a little bit too far down on my back and creating pressure points, around my upper buttocks that shouldn't have been there. So I guess I thought I had a different physique than I did. So I went back in there, watched the video on fitting, and I readjusted it, and I shortened up the torso quite dramatically. And then all of a sudden I had a proper fitting pack, and it felt great. It was basically raising the hips above where I'd had them riding before. So the pack worked extremely well for me. It fit well. I wouldn't say I didn't have pack envy, between the two packs. The Kifaru, it definitely seems like a great pack. It's maybe something I'll try in the future, but at the moment I'm still happy with the Stone Glacier. It's an exceptional pack for the mountains. It carries enough gear for a 2-week trip. It does it well. I don't really see a lot of limitations with that particular pack. I'll probably keep on running it until it's threadbare.
Well, yeah, talking about how packs fit. You guys saw here firsthand. Kyle raves about the Barneys, and you saw it on me. It just won't fit me right. No matter what the experienced guys could do, it just won't sit well. To the point, Kyle took a picture of it to send to Kevin in Alaska to see if he could figure it out. And on the other hand, Kyle's Stone Glacier fits me absolutely perfect. And I can walk with that and do 10, 12K and with 50 pounds on the back, and it's great. So yeah, it's that fitting properly is key.
Yeah, I guess that's just like boots, right? Not every boot fits everybody. You might have to work your way through a few before it makes it work. You find what one particular works with your physical, or I wouldn't say abilities, but attributes, or
Yeah, for sure. Okay, cool. And yeah, and you run yours is a Stone Glacier, the 6900, the Sky Guide, I think, right, Mike? It's a 6900 liter or 6900 cc one is the one that
that's correct. That's
you're
correct.
running.
With the
Yeah,
top,
cool.
with the top
Yeah.
lid. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, great pack too, and yeah, I love it. Love that pack as well. And okay, cool. So that's pack. Um, so I know your wife's milling around the background, so I probably shouldn't ask you about new gear right now, but we did talk about new gear on the trip. So you had some failures. So talk about your failures of your gear on the trip, Mike.
Sure. So one was the InReach, a very important piece of equipment. That failed. So it's a few years old. I think it's 5 or 6 years old now. However, I don't use it throughout the year. It's generally just through the hunting season, maybe a bit of backpacking or fishing in the fall. But it doesn't see a lot of usage. I'm generally pretty protective with it. It stays in a dry container and it stays in a stuff sack on the top of my pack, so it doesn't get a lot of abuse. But yeah, it definitely failed. So I was getting weird messages. Well, first of all, I don't know if Kyle believed me or not. He thought there again it was operator error, but I'm like, hey, my InReach turned on by itself. It was autonomously, it turned itself on. And he's like, no, that couldn't happen. I'm like, no, it absolutely happened. And I look at it, it'd be some strange messages on the screen saying about an update. Do you want your software update at this particular moment? It'll wipe all your data, something like this. So the first time it happened, I thought, well, maybe it was just in my bag and it got turned on. Maybe another piece of equipment hit the on button for an extended period of time. But it still didn't make sense as I went in there with 99% or 100% on the battery charge. I'd look at it a couple hours later, and after it turned itself on, and it would be down to 60%. So at that point, it happened 2 or 3 times. I was down to 30-odd%. So I decided I can't. Maybe it's the jostling. I knew something was wrong with it internally. I didn't know if it was software or it was something to do with the wiring. Maybe there's a contact inside that was messing it up, turning itself on. So I just left it in the tent, and so I could at least, text my wife once every few days and let her know or update our position with her. And I think on the 5th or 6th day, I went to turn it on, and it just wouldn't turn on anymore. So therefore, Kyle was kind enough to let me use his every few days to contact home. But it was definitely a failure. I mean, I love the piece of equipment. I think it's invaluable in the backcountry for security, for safety, for communication. It allows 2 hunters such as Kyle and myself to go to different ridges, and you initially make plans, but invariably things change in the mountains. So whether it's time or locations, you can let the other person know, and they're not worried about you. And if you go on a solo trip, it's even a more critical piece of equipment for allowing people to know where you're at, and giving peace of mind to your loved ones. But yeah, it failed. So I'm going to contact InReach, and we'll see how they respond. I'll see if maybe it's not a new piece of equipment, but I think it should have lasted maybe a little bit longer and not had such a massive failure at a critical stage of the hunt.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, definitely a super important piece of gear. Okay, so hiking poles. So you and I run the same poles. We run Black Diamond. We got the carbon cork, I think they're called, and with the flick locks. And so mine now are getting, I think, about 5 or 6 years old, but the cork's failing on mine. So I'm going to have to either get the handles recorked or maybe look at new ones. And but you had an experience with yours too. You had a bit of a failure there. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, me and hiking poles, we don't get along too well. But Kyle's the one who initially introduced me to hiking poles. I spent a lot of time in the mountains prior to meeting Kyle and us becoming hunting partners. And I guess my young knees and my ego maybe dictated whether I didn't need these poles or not. So eventually, sore knees and sore lower back. It sort of, and Kyle following his lead, it made me relinquish and buy my own set. But of course, at that stage of my life, it was all about lightweight, almost at the exclusion of quality and robustness. So I bought a pair of these ultra lightweight poles from a company in the East Coast of America, and they were high quality. But as it turned out, they were just so lightly built. They were almost, they were usable, but not maybe on a hiking trail up Mount Washington or something like that. So I'm definitely good for groom trails, but not for the stuff we do. And I think Kyle was at the first day we're heading up into the bowl. They broke, or one of them broke, right? it just didn't last. It lasted about 3 hours and snapped. These are $150 poles. So I contacted the company, and they were good enough to give me a full refund and basically said, yeah, that's not what their application is for. So I looked at Kyle, and he was running the Black Diamonds for a few years. He was more than happy with it, albeit they were probably 3 times heavier than the ones I'd previously used. And we were. It was a all-day affair again. I think we had been hiking for, well, the day was probably 14 hours long, but we were 4 hours up and then probably 3 hours back, and just absolutely exhausted from the physical exertion, the weather, and now it's getting later in the hunt, so lack of calories, and we were just busting brush. So there was no trails, and we're going through the buckbrush and the undulating terrain and the thick spruce, and I put one pole down, and as we all know, when your energy levels are dropping precipitously, so do you physically. You start falling and tripping, and I put my pole down, and sometimes they lock in a little more than others. It probably went about 12 inches into the roots, into the moss and such. And as I fell, I should let go of the pole, but I tried to use it to brace me, and it snapped. But yeah, it was but anyway, that's just user error. I wouldn't blame the pole for that. That's me. I'm probably about 190 pounds, and we had a 40-pound pack, so 230 pounds. Sort of using this pole as a lever doesn't go over too well.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about systems. So I run base systems. I run the Icebreaker, which I really like. I'm a big fan of that. Pretty much all my stuff's socks, t-shirt, long underwear, all that stuff is Icebreaker, merino. So love that. Mike, you're a little bit. You run some synthetics, but some merino. What's your system there?
Yeah, so all my external is not merino. It's but yeah, my base layers are definitely merino. But I generally sort of source it from different places. My budget isn't as large as yours for these discretionary spending. But I'll buy some from Sitka. I'll buy some from MEC. I'll buy some from Kuyu. I'm happy with it all. So I'm definitely a natural fiber type of guy. I love my merino. Keeps you warm, keeps you cool, and keeps the odors down. The only drawback I've found with some of the merinos is they do tend to rip pretty easily. So I look now for when I buy a merino, regardless of the thickness, I try to look for one that's a little more blend in it, not 100% merino or even 90% merino, maybe like 70, 75%. It allows me to pull them on and take them off without actually ripping it or getting snagged in some spruce. So that's my base layers. I used to have a huge drive towards ultra lightweight, but still looking for quality. But I've found, I'm replacing a lot of gear. I spent a lot of money on some rain gear, some external gear, and it just doesn't last. The ultra lightweight stuff. Some of the hunting we do, maybe if it was all in the alpine and you weren't sort of busting through brush all day long, then it may last more than a few seasons. But I've persevered with a couple of pairs of rain pants from a major maker of hunting outdoor equipment, and it just hasn't lasted. So it went into the garbage this time because they rip easy, but also I guess not being a 3-layer rain pant, I was actually almost getting wetter wearing them. I was wondering how it was happening because you have the fabric itself, and it's got a coating on the outside, but the inside, I'm not sure what the particular coating would be called, but it was almost like a rubberized, breathable material, and it was almost letting the moisture in, and then it was locking it in. So not only did I think that particular pant, or I have 2 versions of that pant, were not robust enough for the application or the type of hunting we do, but also wasn't doing a good job at all of keeping me dry. To the point where near the end of the trip when it was raining, I just took off my pants, my hunting pants, and then I'll just wear the rain pants. So my pants underneath wouldn't get soaked. So whenever it rained or we hiked, I just wore my rain pants.
Yeah, it's interesting. You brought up an interesting point there, and it's the whole lightweight versus quality discussion, right? So, I run and you kind of chided me a little bit in the past where I run those Stormfront rain gear, right? But it's absolutely like they're so good when it comes to rain protection, right? They're phenomenal, but they're heavy. Like it's 1.5 pounds or something ridiculous for for the gear, but it's such good quality. Same thing, you mentioned the hiking poles. So there's that compromise, right? Trying to find what's more important, lightweight versus quality. But, and it's interesting, Steve, I know you just upgraded the dew point from Sitka, right? So I think that's kind of their mid-level rain gear. It's not going to have the rain protection that the Stormfront has, but it's certainly going to be a lot lighter, and it's going to be great for that mountain experience. But if you go too far, like in Mike's case with his rain gear, they're pretty much not rain gear, right? You're almost better off without them. It's so it's trying to find that balance. And rain gear is such a weird one too, right? Because you can easily a Stormfront system from Sitka off the shelf it's over $1,000, but they're not even the expensive ones. You look at Arc'teryx, and Arc'teryx rain gear set's $3,000, right? Mm-hmm. So it's it's trying to find that healthy balance and what works for you in terms of weight versus quality. But yeah, for me, I'm really happy with the Stormfront. I've run it. I've actually had two systems now. I bought the first one years ago, and I've put on a few pounds. So I upgraded and got a new set last year, and I feel really good in the mountains with them. They see a lot of protection from the rain. So.
I'd have to agree, Kyle. I mean, I follow your lead many times, and with the rain gear is definitely one of those situations. I upgraded the jacket a few years back to the Sitka Stormfront. I've been nothing but happy with it. It's amazing, actually. And then I also attempted to buy some rain pants, the Sitka Stormfront, and I bought them, and unfortunately, they're one size too small. So I wasn't able to take them on this trip. But anyway, I'm going to buy another pair that are larger. And it seems so good, the quality. I think they'd last, I wouldn't say a lifetime, but I can envision many years on the hills with those Stormfronts for sure.
Yeah, right on. Okay, so let's just touch on gaiters. So, you and I, for years, we didn't even consider gaiters really, and then eventually we kind of came around to it, and now we're running gaiters. So they're great. I know you had a set that you weren't overly happy with. I ran a set of Sitka, and they were good, but I had a failure on them. I contacted Sitka customer service, and they were fantastic. They sent me a brand new set, and they revamped them a little bit. They did some work on them. I was a little concerned that they would fail again, but no, they'd done some work on them, and these are much more durable. They've lasted me a lot longer, so I'm really happy with them. But so you just picked up a set of outdoor research, and you're really happy with them, aren't you, Mike?
Yeah, correct. This is the second year I've been running them. Previous to that, I ran other ones from different manufacturers, and they rarely lasted me more than a year. Either the snaps were failing, the zippers were failing, or something just wasn't working with them. The failure were at the point where I couldn't fix them. Having said that, the manufacturers were generally pretty good with replacing them, but I'd rather have something that lasts on the mount and not fail every year than have a great warranty, right? So I'd rather have both, but. So I did a bunch of research on the non-hunting websites and forums, and a lot of people raved, about the outdoor research ones. So I tried them, and the second year running, no failures. They work great. I'm definitely going to stick with that. They don't come in sort of camo for obvious reasons, because that's not their demographic. But I run them in black, and they're great. They're easy to put on, durable, and comfortable. I can't complain about them at all.
Mm-hmm. I've been running outdoor research gaiters for a few years. Absolutely. I love them. No problems, no failures. The Velcro that puts them together, just so stable, so strong. Yeah. No problems. Love them.
Yeah, that's the problem. I think Kyle's run in the past. The ones with, a lot of times with zippers, right? You have zipper failure or the Velcro. I mean, obviously no moving parts, right?
Nope.
Just keep dirt and debris out of the Velcro, and they'll work fine.
Yeah.
Right on. Okay, so we're talking about all this gear. Just a couple of things that I think is worthy to comment on is that we're mentioning the gear that works for us. That doesn't mean that there's not other great companies out there that run that gear. So we're not picking on any particular company or system. I have stuff that works for me, and maybe I have a system, but then I'll have one piece that's a one-off from a different brand. But a lot of it is just personal preference, right? Like I said, the Stone Glacier, great pack, just wasn't the great fit for me, right? So I found a different one that worked better, type thing. On that note, a classic one is boots, right? Like, and they say that, like, try a pack. If it fits great, then it's probably a good pack. And the problem with packs is you almost need to put some weight into it, right? You can't, you throw any pack on with nothing in it, it's going to feel good just because it feels good. But you have to put 100 pounds in it or 50 or 60 pounds in it before you go, oh shit, that's not feeling very good anymore. So, it's kind of that trade-off. And that's one thing with the society where we've talked about doing this, where we're still going to do it, is we're going to reach out to a bunch of the manufacturers and try and get packs from all of them, and maybe do a gear night and throw 50 pounds in each of them, and everyone can try them on and see how they fit, right? So just kind of give you an opportunity to see what a good fit is. And definitely for our convention in Kamloops this year, we're going to do our best to make sure that we have that option there. You can come in, try the packs, and with any luck, maybe we'll get some of the retails there that can help you too, because fitting your pack's a big part of it. You look at Mike, who's an experienced backcountry guy, and it wasn't until this year, I guess, that he kind of figured out how to fit his Stone Glacier, and he had to watch the video, and same thing with me with my Kafaru. I spent a bunch of time going through, watching the video and trying to find a good fit. And truth be told, maybe that's the issue with my Stone Glacier. I never had it fitted properly. So, but anyway, on that note, where that's leading to is boots is another classic example, right? So, and I find it interesting, Mike, because the first 10 years or 7 or 8 years we hunted together, you're always laughing at me and my feet. And now I get to do a little bit to you, right? So, I ran Honwags the first couple of years, and they feel great. They're great boots, but I was getting blisters. And you brought up a point to me. You said, "Hey, Kyle, like you probably should find a boot. You should be able to find a boot that's a good fit that shouldn't cause blisters." Or maybe it might have actually been Darren Thompson from Fisher Marketing that told me. Anyway, regardless, somebody mentioned that to me. So I switched from the Honwags I went with Loas, and the Loas have been a great transition for me. And Mike, you've seen it this year, right? Like I ran 2 weeks straight and not even as much as a hot spot, right? Which is phenomenal. Didn't do any doctoring. I've never had that in the mountains before. So I've been pretty blessed in that regard to crack the code there, right? So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, normally your feet, Kyle, just look like hamburger, right? It's absolutely a nightmare. Peeling back your sock every day is like it's like a slowly revealing a horror scene, right? To see the blisters you have on your feet. So this year was definitely a shock and a success story for you, for sure. However, for me, it was a first, because generally I don't have a lot of problems with boots and hot spots and blisters and such. I've written about them in the past, mitigating hot spots and blisters once you get them. But I think, I'm 52 now, and I think large parts of our bodies, even our feet change. As anybody can attest, you're 2 weeks in the mountains, you get back to the truck, and you don't fit in your sneakers anymore, right? Your feet are swollen or shifted. Currently, I run the Crispy, and I love the boot. I've always run Mendel's in the past. Another great boot, but me personally, I didn't seem to get more than about 2 years out of the boot before it started breaking down. So maybe I should have spent more time in the off season taking care of them. I'm not quite sure, but I think it was called the Mountain Hunter. Great boots, awesome. But decided to switch it up a little bit. Tried Crispy, and I think this is my third year or second year running them. The first year or two, no issues at all. So I know it's not the boot, but I've noticed in my everyday wear as well, along my heel, the very back of my heel, I'm getting maybe a little more of a bony spot, or maybe I'm just getting skinny feet. I'm not sure, but anyway, I kind of anticipated a little bit that I might have issues with my feet, not with the boot, but with my feet. And sure enough, I did. It wasn't with heel slippage or anything. It's strictly the anatomical changes I'm getting in my bone structure of my feet. And so where I did make an error was not getting in front of it. So generally speaking, I'm a big fan of, if there's a problem arising, be proactive as opposed to being reactive. And I let it get to the point of blisters before I did almost anything about it. So I started getting hot spots, and like I said, the weather was so hot. I'm sure that was a contributing factor. But I normally don't get sweaty feet either. And I mean, you could have wrung our socks out. It was so hot with so much sweat. And stopped after 4 or 5 hours for our first camp, and took my socks off, and I already had blisters starting. So that was the first mistake. So before I get to my second mistake, I'll talk about how we mitigate. Prior to getting hot spots, or if you feel one is starting to develop, we're both big fans of duct tape. So what you do is you just get a little bit of duct tape, you cut it, and you just put it on that hot spot, and that stops the friction between your sock and your boot and your foot. So hopefully it won't develop or progress beyond a hot spot to blisters. And if you do make a mistake like I did, and you didn't stop it before it progressed to the point of blisters, then generally what you do is you can take a bit of medical gauze, or me, I'm not quite so concerned about, wrongfully so, about hygiene. I use sometimes a gun patch, and I'll cut it and I'll double it up and I'll put it within the duct tape. So you picture about a 4-inch piece of duct tape with a doubled up gun patch in the middle of it. And if it's on my heel, I put a bit of a clip on the top and the bottom of the tape so it doesn't pucker as I wrap it around my heel. So I wrap it around my heel, and that's what I ended up doing for the entire trip. And the blisters, they're pretty bad. They didn't get any worse. They didn't progress, and it didn't cause me any pain at that point. But I shouldn't have let it get to that point. And having said that, one more mistake I did make was I thought if duct tape is good, why would Gorilla Tape be better? Well, absolutely not. It was worse, because Gorilla Tape probably has double the adhesiveness of duct tape. So I put it on there, left it on for a couple of days. So when I pulled it pulled off lots of skin surrounding the blister as well. So a blister that was maybe sort of 1 centimeter in diameter now became like 3 centimeters in diameter, my whole back of my heel, because I guess it was moist because of the sweating and the Gorilla Tape. And I also also had the beginning of I had a full on blister, so you had the ragged edges that were easy to pull off. So I made a 1 centimeter blister turn into 3 centimeter blisters on both heels. But then I was just ultra conservative. So you wear them during the day, and at nighttime you take them off to allow your foot to breathe and allow the moisture, because your foot's not breathing, so the moisture build up under the duct tape. So, but no, the boots, I have no complaints about those boots, and they're running strong. They're not leaking. I'm more than happy with the crispy boots. They just seem to fit my feet.
Yeah, it's interesting too. With you mentioned like your feet halfway through the hunt were a mess. Like and you were having that issue with the Gorilla Tape, and literally by the last day, it was your heel was completely healed. There was zero evidence of that there'd been a blister. Yeah. It was perfectly healed. Like it's miraculous how the healing quality of the body, in those situations, of how quick that rejuvenated. You couldn't believe that it would repair itself in 5 days like that.
Yeah, it was nuts, because I know at home it would take much longer than that. But and for the listeners out there, it wasn't the superficial blister you get. It was like 2 or 3 layers down there. It was right to the meat. It was pretty gross. But yeah, so as soon as I switched to proper care, it healed itself. So that seems to be a good system. I know, Kyle, you talked about another tape that may be out there that maybe we'll research in the off season. It may do the same thing, but a little more medical orientated.
Yeah, Steve, do you know what that is? Is it Tuco tape?
Leuco tape.
Leuco tape, that's it. Yeah, Peter Gucci mentioned, and I think you said you'd heard of it. Yeah, Leuco. Yeah, okay.
Leuco tape.
Yeah. You've used that before?
It's in my pack to go.
Oh, okay.
But no, I've never used it. It looks skookum. It's not overly sticky, but it's medical stuff, right? So it's what they use in physiotherapy and doctors' offices and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm going to wrap some of that around my water bottle and bring it with me.
Where do you source that from, Steve?
Amazon. It's like $20 to the door.
Okay, that's LUCO, is it?
I'll send you a text on the proper
perfect.
spelling.
Excellent, thank you.
Cool. Okay, so we've kind of hit some of the gear. Rifles, not much there. Not much to talk about. Let's talk about food. Okay, so one of the issues. So we had Bryden Solutions on one of our podcasts. That's a great podcast, Mike. You're super knowledgeable about food. That was actually one of my favorite podcasts, believe it or not. Just hearing about that and all the planning that goes into it. And one of the issues we had this year was just even sourcing some of the stuff, right? With COVID and stuff, it was a bit challenging. You ordered it really early in the season, but even then you had trouble. So we ended up with a lot of oatmeal for breakfast, right?
Exactly. Normally we have a lot more variety from day to day, with whether it's scrambled eggs or omelets or sausage scramble, as opposed to the oatmeal. So we buy oatmeal and granola that's freeze dried, but also make our own. Which gives a good variety. As we know, like in the backcountry, you definitely don't want to repeat the same meal every day because it gets pretty bad, and you're less likely to finish your meal and have that caloric intake. Keep it up. But we had a few of our old standbys, especially for dinner. So Next Mile Meals, which are great. They're very keto oriented, high amounts of protein, absolutely delicious. Peak refuel, same thing, not so keto orientated, but really, really good. These freeze dried foods have come so far from the 80s and the 90s where I couldn't even finish one. I just dump half of it into the fire, because they all tasted like chili powder and bad noodles. It was just absolutely gross. And what's the one we used this year, Kyle? That I think Mike suggested, was that the Packet?
Packet. Yeah,
and they
Packet
were good.
Gourmet.
I mean, they were. Yeah, Packet Gourmet. They were excellent.
Was that the chicken one?
I like the pizza one.
Yeah, you showed me some chicken thing.
Oh,
here.
I know. I think the chicken one may have been the Next Mile Meals, the total keto one. Yeah. So the Packet Gourmet. So I tend to make a few errors, and I make them every year. But this year, because we're having a little harder time sourcing the meals we wanted to due to COVID, we decided to try Packet Gourmet due to a great suggestion from one of Kyle's friends. But then Kyle passed it on to me because I'm less busy than he is, because I'm gainfully unemployed at the moment. I know I didn't really have time or the inclination to do as much research. I kind of took it as the suggestion that we should try these, and we tried these meals. They're excellent, great flavors. However, I didn't read the fine print, and the fine print said bring tortillas. And even one, you needed to bring another stove with a frying pan to fry up the dough. So there's a lot more steps to it than your average sort of backpacking meals. So which made a couple meals almost inedible, because they were basically dough. You had to fry them, and for obvious reasons, you just don't add water to dough and eat it. And the other ones definitely needed, they were built to be put into a tortilla or something like that, which would have been great. Unfortunately, tortillas are heavy, but they do have a high calorie count. But I didn't read the fine print, so we had none of that. So we're having pizzas in a bag and this kind of stuff. So the flavors are there, but just it just wasn't the dining experience we should have or could have expected.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with you. Like you said, that the flavors were good. But eating that raw dough, and we did it twice, right? We needed the calories, but it was eating literally raw dough. So, so I guess that's the warning, like Packet Gourmet, check them out. They're a good product, but just make sure you read the fine print. Some of them you don't need anything with it. But a lot of them you do. They recommend, like there's one pizza one, and very cool. It's great, but you're supposed to put it on a tortilla and then eat it like that, right? Or like a tortilla shell, soft taco type thing. And so in terms of meals, just a couple things to note. Peak blows everybody out of the water calorie wise. So sausage and gravy, that's a new one this year, and people rave about, and we agree it was awesome. Mike, you were arm wrestling for me.
Was that? I think that was the biscuits and gravy.
Biscuits and gravy, and biscuits and sausage gravy. That's what
right.
It is.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
1,100 calories. So big powerhouse. A lot of these meals are 5, 6, even 450, right? So, they double what a normal meal is. So, really great on the calorie count. But if you look at the transition to Next Mile Meals, which is, they're out of Colorado, I think, really good tasting. But if you do a comparison, so the calories are going to be down like that 600 range, 5, 6, 700. But the protein is like 54 grams of protein, right? So whereas if you look at a peak one, they're the 30 range type thing. So protein's through the roof on these Next Mile meals, and really good flavor, really good quality. I really enjoyed having them in the bush as well. So definitely both those were fantastic. And we had some Mountain House. How was your Mountain House, Mike?
Well, the Mountain House was good. Yeah, they've come a long way, so it's hard for me because, it's like growing up in the 80s with the Hyundai cars. They're absolutely horrible, and they were junk, and they're built to explode after 3 years, even though they're fantastic vehicles now, and they've had one of the best Consumer Report ratings out there. I'd have a hard time buying one because of it. So, growing up with Mountain House and that kind of stuff, Backpacker's Pantry, they're great. I'm sure they are. But I think they're made more for the masses, mass produced, and maybe maybe where they get the calories from isn't quite as good as where Peak Refuel gets it from, or Next Mile Meals. So that's why I stick to these ones. just as an example, Kyle, I got a Next Mile Meals in front of me here. It's buffalo style ranch chicken. It's a single serving and it's 520 calories. However, it has a whopping 57 grams of protein, which is incredible.
Wow.
And keep in mind, they are delicious. And right beside me here, I got a Peak Refuel. It's a butternut Dalbot. And it's comes in as 2 servings, but the protein is less than half at 23 grams, but has 870 grams of 870 calories. So I think what it comes down to is variety again, right? You don't always have to eat for calories, but protein as well, because your body is craving both of those.
Yeah, it was interesting on this one, on this trip. We ate a lot of freeze dried, and my guts were starting to act up. And I think you mentioned you were starting to feel a little bit too. I think just so much freeze dried, and there's really no real food that we're having. All your food's coming from a bag. So by the end of it, it was starting to. I never really noticed it before. I'm not sure why it was, but yeah, as you recall, we were on the mountain and chasing that big ram that we talked about earlier in the podcast, and had to take a bathroom break. So it was a bit nerve wracking to be on the mountain, and Mike always made fun of one of his hunting partners in a previous lifetime that had a big moose, and he had to go use the bathroom and missed out the other opportunity. I had visions of that with this ram. So anyway, we got things taken care of, but my stomach was starting to get a little bit queasy by the end of the trip, and I think it was just too much freeze dried, right? 2 weeks of it. So
yeah, the absolute panic in your eyes. I don't think I will forget that. But yeah, no, I think anybody who eats freeze dried and packaged for 2 weeks, you're going to have issues at some point or another, right? It's a huge transition for your body.
Yeah. So on that note, a couple things. Let's talk about the biological stuff. So, I've always carried 3 rolls of toilet paper. You and I both, I got away with 1 on this trip, but we always talked about the emergency planning with regards to, if you end up with giardia or some sort of stomach bug. But, now we're so blessed with the technology, right? We got SteriPens, and on this trip, we're in great shape because we're in the mountains and where there was really strong creeks everywhere, lots of glacier runoff. We did SteriPen some of our stuff, but 90% of it, we were able to just source it from the creek and not have to do anything with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, I've had giardia in the past, and that's why, I'm not nearly as active as you are in the mountains with that requirement, but I've always brought 2 rolls and some wipes, where generally in 2 weeks, I'd only go through 1 roll. Maybe I'm too judicious. I don't know. Talk to my tent mate, but but the other roll I just bring along just in case, because that for me, that's an emergency, maybe it's not a life threatening one, but I've had giardia before, and you can go through a roll of toilet paper in a couple of hours, right? Yep. So that's one of my emergency pieces. So it just stays in my backpack. But having said that, ever since the new technology, like SteriPens, it just made it so much easier, to treat your water. In the past, use things like way in the past, we put tablets in, and then I got around to the sweet water, which is a pump, and you pump your water through a diaphragm. And those are prone to failure, but it was also slow and it took time, So sometimes you look at a stream and you might make the decision, you might, weigh the cost of clean water as opposed to time, or you're just tired and you're lazy, so you may not do it, which is what probably happened to me many years ago up north, of why I got giardia and took many months to get rid of it. But now with the SteriPen, it's just so easy, sometimes it's a no-brainer. You look at a river and you're like, yeah, nothing needs to be done to that. But the SteriPen, if you're getting water from a marginal source, and if we talk about any doubt and you decide not to treat it, it's because you're lazy, because it only takes 2 minutes. You pop out your SteriPen, you put it in the water, and you're done in 2 minutes. And we've never had an issue. I think I can't know the exact number, but it's between 99 or 97 and 99% of waterborne sort of bugs are killed by this thing. I think the ultraviolet light disrupts their DNA in some form and kills them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great piece of kit for sure. So, on that note, one of the things that we sort of were monitoring or keeping an eye on this trip was our fuel usage. So, we run the wind burner from MSR, a great product, and Mike and I each have one. We just brought one between the two of us. no redundancy. That's all we brought. And we brought two of the large containers, like they're 500 and something. They're the large containers that MSR builds. We brought two. And we kind of, in the past, actually, on late season hunts, we've actually brought two plus a small one, right? So anyway, we said, yeah, we're probably good with just two this trip. So of interest, we ran the wind burner. We cooked breakfast and dinner every day. So we always had a hot meal and a hot breakfast and a hot dinner. And we had a minimum of 2 coffees each day. So 4 coffees minimum. Sometimes we'd have more. And now we didn't have to boil any water for bugs, because we could treat everything with SteriPen, or we didn't need to do it. And one container lasted the two of us 12 days in the mountains. So we went in on the 29th, came out on, the night of the 9th, we still had fuel that night when we had our dinner. So it's pretty phenomenal. One container is all. So next trip we said, we'll take 1 container plus a small one. We don't need the 2 big ones. It was overkill. We never did need that one. I think we used it on day 10 or something, the big one, a new one, right?
I can't remember, Carl. I don't actually. Well, it's possible at the back of the lake we did, but when I got that second can back, it still had the plastic cap on it, so maybe we didn't. But I think it would have been pretty darn close. And then, like you said, in the future, take 1 large one and 1 small one for backup. But it's important to note it was quite warm as well, so therefore the water didn't take as long to bring it to a boil. So in that case, and as Kyle he segued between the two with the SteriPen, there's no need to boil your water. So right there, it's going to save you probably 200-300% of your fuel usage, not having to boil your water. So in that regard, it was good. Yeah, definitely 1 large and 1 small next time.
Yeah, and I think probably more than likely that would work for even a later season hunt as well. The one thing that we did do is when it was windy, we'd kind of go in the vestibule. We had the luxury of the vestibule, and these are all factors that come into play, right? Like if you have to boil your water on the mountain and it's a 20 knot or 30 knot wind, 30 mile an hour wind, you're going to use a lot more fuel. But whenever it was windy, we go inside the tent, use the vestibule to protect us, and the water. And it's incredible. Those wind burners are fantastic, and JetBoil is great too. I'm not brand specific, but the wind burner, it was crazy. We'd put a liter of water in for our coffee, or just shy of a liter, I think, and it would boil within a minute. It was, or whatever. It's super fast. It's incredible how quick it would boil. Every time I was shocked at how quick it would boil for us. So
I also think it's important to note to maybe new hunters that maybe not eaten a lot of freeze dried as well. So with the exception of the Packet Gourmet, if there is ever an issue, if you do run out, it's not an emergency situation. Even if it's a hard noodle that's within your freeze dried bag, it'll eventually rehydrate. If you put in cold water and you leave it for anywhere from a half hour to maybe even up to 3 or 4 hours, it's going to rehydrate. You're just going to have a cold meal instead of a hot meal, but the nutritional content will still be there, because you don't have to worry about any sort of catching any bugs, because you're not actually cooking it when you enter that boiling water. It's already pre-cooked. So it's just a matter of heating it and rehydrating it. So,
and we've kind of been through that. Like I remember that time we were stone sheep hunting. We did that fly-in, and we went up after some rams, and we went super lightweight. We took the sill dome with us, and just some freeze-dried meals, but we didn't take a stove or anything. And I think we ended up hydrating in the morning for our dinner at night, and like we ate the meals cold. And you tried to pick ones without noodles and that sort of stuff that didn't require cooking, but it worked fine, right? It wasn't great eating. It wasn't something you enjoyed, but you certainly were getting the sustenance, right? So
yeah, right. It was definitely not a comfort meal. It was all about the sustenance.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Mike, anything else we're missing in terms of gear or equipment or anything on the trip that you thought of? I know you're going to make some notes. Have you written stuff down or what?
I have made some notes, funny enough. So why don't we talk a little bit about gun maintenance?
Yeah.
In that regard. So I know one of the things that, I never really use, but another sort of technique that I've adopted from you, just not even as far as maintenance goes, but as far as deterrence of getting anything into your barrel, just a little bit of electrical tape. I'm a big fan of that, but I never was to begin with. So invariably I forget every year, and Kyle brings a little bit extra for me because he knows I'll forget. But especially when we're carrying your guns, the way I do, and you're strapped to your backpack with the muzzle up. So and you're crashing through bush for hours every day. You're always going to get debris in there. So just a little bit of electrical tape, 1-2-inch piece over the top, and then maybe another 2-inch piece just around the circumference to secure that first piece, and that does wonders and saves your barrel from getting moisture in there and all sorts of debris. And then as far as the maintenance goes, guns have come a long way. When I first started going up north, they're all wood barrels the wood stocks with blued barrels. And even the ones, the early generation of stainless steel, they would still get surface tarnish on them. So if it was region, 6, especially in the Northwest, and it's horrendous rain, we're having problems with our rifles, whether it was the bolt or the barrel rusting. So generally, in those days, we'd take it apart, bring a little screwdriver with you, take off the barrel in the action, and you'd wipe it down with a little bit of oil. So generally, even now, when I go to the back, I'll take a little Ziploc. I'll take maybe 20 gun patches, and I'll pre-oil them, and I'll take a bunch of Q-tips, and I'll pre-oil them as well, and bring some dry gun patches. And it's not a gun snake, but it's just a little piece of string with a little weighted end on the bottom of it. And I'll just run that through my barrel depending on the weather. If it's nice weather and there's no rain, maybe once a week. But if it's raining every day, I'll do it every 2 or 3 days. I'll run it down the barrel, and then I'll take out the bolts. And you'll be surprised how much dust and debris you get in there when you're hiking through. So with the Q-tips, allows you to get right into the little nooks and crannies of your action and your bolt and get all that debris out. And then I just take a couple of pre-oil patches, and I just run on my finger, and I run it within the action and try to get into the breech and stuff, and I'll oil it. And one of the things I've learned in the past, which new people may make a mistake, if you go into your tent at night and it's high humidity and you're wet and your gun's wet and you just place it on the bathtub bottom, you're probably going to get rust or surface rust even on your stainless steel rifle. So what I generally try to do is I try to dry it off a little bit, whether it's a sock or a t-shirt, and then I create a barrier between the rifle and the bathtub bottom on the tent. So I'll put my jacket down or stuff sacks, and I'll place my rifle on top of that, because Kyle and I, we both had that issue with, I wouldn't say high-end rifles, but moderately high-price rifles. And maybe the highest end top-level rifles, you wouldn't have that issue, but I've never been able to afford those rifles. So that's kind of what I do for my rifle. What do you think, Kyle? Can you add anything to that?
No, I think you got it. Perfect.
I know one thing we wanted to talk about. I'm not sure how we're doing for time, Kyle, but we wanted to talk about crossing streams.
Yeah, let's go there for sure.
Okay. Do you want to start off?
Well, I can tell you that we've almost died several times, so that's the good segue there. But for sure, it's definitely a challenge, and certainly if you're going to hunt in the backcountry, you got to find out. First of all, I think a big part of it is just research ahead of time, right? Like find out where you're going and where you need to get going. If you can't get across a river, you don't think you can get across a river, and you don't have any evidence that you can. You might, that can be the difference of whether or not you can hunt in that area, right? So there might be a area you're really keen on getting to, but if you can't cross that river, you're wasting your time and energy, right? So, and it's funny, the river, it's not linear either, right? You can look at a tiny little stream and you think, oh, there's no problem, and it's not that deep. But if it's a very forceful glacier, you might be in a situation where you can't get across it. And we on our Dall sheep hunt, we experienced that, right? We had the fortitude of someone telling us, bring a little raft with you or a little inflatable. And that's how we got across. We would have never crossed that stream if we didn't have that inflatable, I don't think. So, it allowed us to get across there. So, it was one of those things where, we were doing these stream crossings on our trip, and we said, we need to talk about this because it's probably one of the most dangerous things. I think other than exposure, that's probably one of the most dangerous things we do in the backcountry, right? So anyway, over to you, Mike.
Yeah, sure. I guess one particular thing to note is not only from year to year or season to season, but also week to week and day to day, that stream will vary. Many sort of environmental factors will contribute to it. The amount of rain that particular day, the amount of rain over the previous week, how sunny it is, it's going to affect the glaciers and the snowpack, how much water they're both releasing. So we've gone one particular area, we've hiked in off a highway, and some years it's benign. It's just nothing. You don't even think about it. It's just little over your ankles. And then you come back another year, and we were there during a few years back when there was almost rains of biblical proportions, and it was downright scary. It was unbelievable, So this one particular stream, its grade is such that anything over your knees is dangerous. I don't know what it's doing, but it's 15, 20 miles an hour or something. It's crazy. So, so we went in, it was benign, and we came out and we made the typical error that many young pilots have made in the past is, the get home-itis. We put that in front of our own personal safety, and either one of us, we could have, it would have been ugly. I don't want to prophesize what would have happened, but if either one of us lost our footing on that, it would have been super ugly. And it was an error. We should have camped by the stream for a day or two, wait for those water levels to drop, and then attempted to go across. But it was to the point, where once you committed, you're a few feet from shore, you couldn't even turn around. In order to put the pole where you wanted it to go, you had to aim it 2 feet upstream, because even if you jabbed it down, by the time it went to the water and you locked it in, and then even then it was, I don't know what the frequency was, but it looked like it was 2,000 RPM, the way those poles were vibrating so fast. So, an important piece of information, I think, for crossing a stream is bring Crocs, because if you don't, and it's a glacier-fed stream, it's going to feel like someone's hitting your toes with a ball-peen hammer, right? And you're just going to want to curl up in a ball. Poles, extremely important. Even if you only bring one pair between you and your partner, hopefully you can get them across the stream. You can shuttle them across, because I think most of the streams we've crossed, after a significant rain, we never would have made it without poles. It's just too dangerous. It's hard to say. It's not a one-size-fits-all type of thing for judging a stream. It's one particular stream, depending on the grade, you can be up to your chest, as we all know, slow-moving waters. I've done it before. I held my pack above my head, I've been up to my chest, walk across it, no problem. Other streams, anything above your knee is absolutely treacherous, and shouldn't be attempted. So I think it's a personal thing. You go in there, and you look what it's like. It's experience, and I wouldn't suggest to anybody, new hunters attempting a raging stream on their own without any kind of experienced hunter helping them along the way, because that's one of the things you don't want to learn by experience if you can help it. Because there's previous to Kyle, I used to hunt with another guy, and we were up in the West Shoshone, and there would have been another hunter up there who came to his end, apparently trying to cross the stream. So that's a perfect example. And they mobilized all hands, and like Urs from up there in Muncho, he was searching around and putting the word out, looking for this guy, but it turned out it was a stream crossing that did him in. So, so that's the dangerous part and things to look out for. And I'm by far an expert. There's a lot more experienced mountaineers that I would talk to. They can actually. I won't talk techniques. Kyle and I, we develop a few that work for us, but I think it's more important to talk to people with experience, or read books or gather sources of information beyond us. So the easy part of crossing, if it's an easy part, it slows you down. So the first thing is, you budgeted time. It's going to take 4 hours from get to A to B. But if there's 3 or 4 stream crossings, I think we budget an extra 20 minutes per stream crossing. So one of the ways you can sort of mitigate, I think, trouble is look up and down the stream. Is there a place where it braids? So if a place that braids and you can walk from island to island, it's going to reduce the overall flow and force, who knows, 20, 40, 60%. So take your time, look up and down the stream, and look for a place where it braids. Some people will even think, if they don't have a lot of experience with water, is like they'll find a narrow section. But people don't realize, that's just concentrating the force, right? It's making it deeper and faster, kind of Venturi effect. So sometimes it's better to look for a wider area where the actual stream or the river is at its widest point. And therefore, its force is distributed over a greater distance. So that's what we look for, is wide area, and it's braided. And a lot of times you can see the ripples, what it's doing. It will give you a good indication of what's below. So what we generally do is we take our Crocs and we gear down to our underwear. Take your boots off. We secure them to our pack. Make sure they're secured good, because if they fall off in that stream, they are gone. You're never getting them back. So we secure them well, secure our pants well, and put on our Crocs, and then we make our way across. And depending on the flow, it depends on how long it takes us to get across. But one thing I found works really well is when you get to the other side, now your feet are wet. So if it's hot and you're already developing blisters or hot spots, the last thing you want is wet feet to put back in your socks. So generally, just I carry like a little chamois kind of towelette or something. Keep that in the lid of your pack or something like that, or somewhere that's accessible. Then you can dry your feet off, put your socks on, and away you go. So that's pretty much all I have to add for stream crossings. How about you, Kyle?
Yeah, just worthy of note that if you're on an outfitter trail, lots of times it'll be a horse trail or maybe even a game trail. You might not necessarily have to cross, and do your due diligence. So make sure you look down the trail if you can. And there's been many times where we've crossed, and then you go 30 feet and you're crossing back, and you could have just busted brush for 30 feet. The outfitter, they're just going to ride their horse trail through there, and they're not too worried about crossing a stream on a horse. But for someone like us that's having to take your Crocs off, and the worst thing is you take your Crocs off, you take your boots off, put your Crocs in, you cross, you get all your gear back on, and then you go 200 meters up the trail, and then you're crossing again. It's soul destroying when you're exhausted. So, and we ran into that on this trip, right? We had a good look, and you kind of said, well, let's go a little further. And sure enough, we went 300 meters up and it crossed back, and we didn't have to do it. But then there's other times it's obvious. You look, there's a rock face there or a cliff, and you're like, well, there's no way around that, so we're gonna have to cross here. So so just the one and that kind of leads us to the next one, I guess, is just doing a really good reconnaissance. Like if you're on a horse trail or an outfitter trail, there's a reason the outfitters are using that trail. It's because it's the best route, and we've done it. We've fallen into that trap several times where we're like, oh, hey, let's just there's a shortcut, let's take the shortcut. Almost never is that the right call. So, and we've learned that the hard way many times. And, me being inexperienced in the mountains, I've talked Mike into it a few times, like, hey, let's go do this. Let's go take this. It's going to be quicker. And then afterwards you regret it every time. And if you're busting brush and you're on your horse trail and you lose it, and there's a horse trail there, go back and find it. And we did that. I think that on this trip, we did that well, Mike. There were several times we lost the trail, and we just said, okay, drop the packs, go find the trail. We found the trail and we got back on it. And it took you 10 minutes to find the trail, but you saved an hour of busting brush doing that, right? So, yeah, I think it's about being smart, right? So,
yeah, absolutely. Like the horse trails in this particular area are very distinct when they're going through the spruce trees, but as soon as it gets into the open areas of willow trees, those are generally indications of that there's been a slide that year, or it's repetitive slides every year, and it's usually marshy on the bottom. So the trails just get obliterated. Every time the pack train comes through, every season they just make a new trail. So we were first in there this year. There've been obviously no outfitters in for a couple of years. So yeah, we'd get to an area and have to transit 400 or 500 meters through this open area to get to the trees again, and we'd invariably lose the trail. So yeah, we were very disciplined. We didn't talk ourselves into taking shortcuts or hoping for the best. We just dropped our packs, battled the bugs for a few more minutes, and we found the trails. Then we started up our journey again. So I think if anything from this podcast, I think lesson learned and relearned every year is find the trails, whatever it takes, and stay on the trail, stay on it. Because those trails in the mountains, not only are they going to make your life easier, but they're leading somewhere. If you're following those horse trails in the mountains, the outfitters are following those horse trails into the mountains because there's rams there. So find the outfitter camps, the spike camps and stuff. Not all horse trails lead to rams, but a lot of them do. So stay on those trails.
Yeah, great advice. All right. Well, I think we've hit a lot of points today. There's more we could talk about, but I think we could wrap this one up, and we'll definitely be splitting this one into two. But I think we've done a pretty good job of hitting some of the major points on gear and some of the tips and tricks, and appreciate you taking the time, Mike, to sit down with us and share your experience. I know that every time I'm in the mountains, I learn new stuff from you, and I've been hunting with you for, better part of a decade and a half, but that 30 years of mountain experience has come in, there's a lot of wealth and knowledge there. So I appreciate you sharing with us what you learned.
Well, thanks, Kyle. Yeah, I enjoy, as you know me well, I enjoy talking, so it's not a burden at all.
And Steve, I'm pretty stoked, man. Like, I can't wait to hear how your caribou / sheep / goat hunt goes this fall. Mm-hmm. And you've kind of become a disciple, if you will, just taking all this in. You've had so many different mentors, I guess, on the podcast here, right? And I was just commenting to Mike about this. Like Steve's got all these these great guys that have come on and girls that have got so much experience in the mountains, and you've got to glean all this information from them. Now you get to put it to use. So we're pretty envious of that first trip for you. So.
Oh yeah, it's not like I'm not taking notes.
Awesome. So anyway, appreciate your time, Mike. And another great sheep season in the books. And hopefully one of these years we kill a ram again.
Thanks, Kyle. No, I enjoyed hanging out today, and to look forward to another podcast in the near future.
Sounds great. Good times.
Take care, guys. See you.